Hi, welcome to the Gamesplainer. I'm Jeff the Gamesplainer and today I'm Gamesplaining 2019. So it's time for my top 10 list this year. Now, as I've previously mentioned on previous top 10 lists, this is not the same as other people's top 10 lists simply because I don't think that it's viable to go only after the last year of stuff that's come out. Simply because, number one, I live in Australia, so therefore a lot of the stuff that came out in 2019, especially the S and stuff, still hasn't made it to our shores. So I'm still waiting to actually be able to get some of that and do some reviews of that. So what I do instead is I go through every game that I've played in 2019, and if it has had at least 2 plays, it is viable or eligible. I then line them up and go, those ones are the top 10. And that's what I've got to. Surprisingly, about half of this list is stuff that I got in 2019. So stuff that got released or really close on released with the 2019 stuff, or back to S in 2018 possibly. So without much further ado, let's get straight into it. My number 10 for 2019 is a game called Crusaders. I have really appreciated this game. This game is a game that is different than what I expected whenever I've played it. And in fact, every time I've played it, I've had this expectation of, I'm going to go and battle and battle and battle, or I'm going to go and I'm just going to sit and take the stuff. And what ends up happening is that that invariably means that I'm not going to win. You need to get your head into what the game actually is, which is this Moncola idea. So Crusaders, I really appreciate it. I appreciate it for what it is and what it does for gaming, and I'll leave that there. Let's move on. That was my number 10, Crusaders. They will be done. My number 9 is Gugong. Now, I believe that this has recently had a Kickstarter for an expansion for people who got the original deluxe version of Kickstarter. I might have bought into it, but this is the store version, so I don't have the appropriate version of the game to be able to get the Kickstarter expansion, so I'm not going to bother. In fact, a lot of expansion material I'm not bothering with anymore, but that's simply because I don't have time to get back and play it. Gugong, however, is one that I've suggested a heck of a lot of times for people to play. It's a tough little finicky game where you have a hand of maybe 4 cards and you have to find something to do with those cards, and getting more cards into that lineup is actually pretty tough, and you've got to work really hard to get to that, and finding the balance on that, it's actually really good and really tough. So Gugong is my number 9 game for 2019. My number 8 game for 2019 is a game that a lot of other YouTube names have said this is my top game for 2019, or at least it's in their top 10 list. So I'm going to join them. It is in my top 10 list. Now, having said that, this is also a space game. You may have guessed by now, Black Angel. Black Angel is a space game, which if you have watched my videos, you'll know that I tend to not do the space game so much. That is more because of my wife. She played this and it's like, I kind of enjoyed that game. So look, I think that Black Angel is a quality game. There's a lot going on with it. There's a lot to think about. There's a heck of a lot going on with, I've got these cards and I can play these cards to be able to do this action, but if I do that action, I'm not going to be able to do this other action, which is going to get me more points. And there's a heck of a lot of thinkiness with this game. Black Angel, I really appreciate it. I think that it's worthwhile going back and actually watching my video of Black Angel, if you're able to find it, to get a feel for the game. I think it's a really solid game. And let's move straight on to my number 7 game for 2019. This is a game that I want to get back to the table and hasn't really been played much since I first got it. I played it a few times, but then it's kind of gone by the wayside a little bit. I really appreciate it. Underwater Cities. I think there is a expansion that's just come out for Underwater Cities. It's a worthwhile expansion to get. It's Vladimir Suchi, who did the Last Will games and a few others of note, that it changes the way we understand gaming. This game, I find it's below the water, so we tend to play stuff that's on land or stuff that's in space. We very rarely play below water games. This is very much I've got a hand of cards, I can play a card onto any of the spots around the board available. But if I match that color, then I'll get to do an extra action. And this extra action idea, I really like it. I really appreciate it. I think it's a worthwhile thing to kind of have a look at. If you haven't come across Underwater Cities, I really suggest that as a solid game. So Underwater Cities is my number 7 game for 2019. My number 6 game for 2019 is a game that has been on this list every time I've done it, I think. I haven't gone back and actually had a look to double check that, but I'm pretty sure it has been on the list. This is the oldest game that I will be presenting to you as a top 10 game today. The reason that this has come back, and I was actually really close to not putting it on there because it was old and it's like, oh yeah, okay, I've played it. But there's an expansion for it that came out in the last year or two that I think makes the game really work well. Much better than the base game. In fact, so much so that if I'm playing this game, I will play it with the expansion. I've forgotten the non-expansion stuff. I've forgotten what's changed. It feels so right to have this. And the game I'm talking about, of course, is A Feast for Odin. A Feast for Odin, yes, it is still on the top 10. It is still a much loved game in this household. It's still a game that my wife really enjoys and will say, hey, let's play that game. And I think that's a game that makes it worth the top 10. So A Feast for Odin is my number 6 game for 2019. My number 5 is another game that has appeared on my lists before, and I really appreciate it. It's another game that it's in that set of I really want to play that game a lot. It doesn't get played often because it is super heavy, and you may have guessed it by now. It is The Gallerist by Vita Losada. This is the only Vita Losada game that has made my list this year. Generally, I've found that my lists have included a couple of the Vita Losada games. He came out with a new one in 2019 of The Escape Plan, and I really like that, but I still think that The Gallerist belongs on this list more so than any of the others. The only other one that was actually eligible was Lisboa. It missed out by that much. I fear that I've played that one a fair bit, and it doesn't get played as often as some of the other games, so I had to ignore that one. I think it's had about 4 plays in 2019, and I feel that it's going to continue to have many plays ongoing after that. So The Gallerist is my number 4 game for 2019. My number 3 game is a game that I only just got my hands on. I managed to get a couple of plays out of it, and I really like it. I think that I'll actually do my gamesplay on this game in the following weekend. So in a couple of days' time, you'll probably see this one coming through. And what is that game, you may be asking? Mega City Oceania. With Mega City, what it's done is it's taken a dexterity game but joined it in with a whole bunch of other manipulations. So it's not just a dexterity game. It's not just a pick up and deliver or any of the other things that you might wish to call, Mega City Oceania. But it's really good. I fear it takes longer than the box suggests. The box does suggest 45 minutes to an hour. With 4 players, it took me 2 hours to get through the thing the other day. And I fear that it's that group and they just want to sit back and actually think about what's going on. And there's a couple of players. I do fear with this game that you want to not have that going on too much because it does slow down the game dramatically. However, having said that, Mega City Oceania is a very good game, and I suggest look out for my upcoming Gamesplaination of it so you can get a feel for what it is and what's going on with it. Mega City Oceania, my number 4 game for 2019. Okay, next on the list is again a game that has been on many people's lists through the year. In fact, I've played this one so much that I forgot that it was a 2019 release. It feels like it's a bit older than that, but no, it's not. Wingspan. It belongs on this list. It absolutely does. I found that with the way this game plays, it's just so easy. I can put that down on the table. Myself and my wife will just go bang, 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 and knock through it really quickly. With people who are fresh to the game, however, it has taken a heck of a long time previously. So just be aware of that. But there's some beautiful components, but more so than the components, the way the game plays is actually really straightforward, but also is really desperately thinky. And I really appreciate that, and I think that's a good thing for any game to have. It's graspable enough, is that a word? It is now, for people who haven't played games to kind of understand. Of course, there's not a whole bunch of you need to this, then this, then this, then this, which loses them. But there's enough depth in it for people who are gamers and have played a lot of games to really come out and go, oh yeah, I really like that game. My number 2 game is another Stonemaier game. It's another game that came out this year. It is Tapestry. Now, Tapestry is one of these games that has had a heck of a lot of people talking about it, and not necessarily in the positive. I have found that the various podcasts and things I listen to, some of the people really like it, some of them really desperately don't like it, some of them find holes in it, some of them don't like the fact that there's only 25,000 copies of the game available. It should be more available than that, but let's be honest, how many copies are people actually selling? I think 25,000 is a really good number to go with. So I have no problem with that. The other criticism I heard this game is that there's like one path to victory. When I've played it, that has not been the case. I've tried the path that people are talking about, the path that was played against me and really wiped me out, and that hasn't won the game every time I've played. I think this is a really wonderful game. There's very little to actually think about in terms of I have to do something. You have to choose one of 4 things. But the expansion on what you can do within that is actually really high. So there's a lot of thinkiness that can go on, or you can just play it. And I find that's really good with all the Stonemaier games, that they play in a way that you can think a lot about it if you wish, or you can just play really quickly because the rule set on it isn't actually that deep. It's just what's going on within that rule set that has the depth to it and has everyone going, oh. So my number 2 game was Tapestry. And that brings me down to my number 1 game for 2019. And it may not surprise you, especially if you are someone who has actually played games with me. And it may not surprise you at all that my number 1 for 2019 is exactly the same number 1 that I had last year. Brass Birmingham. I love this game. Absolutely adore it. I think that it's a wonderful, wonderful game. There's a lot of concepts going on. There's a lot to think about. I didn't play the original Brass. I've mentioned this a number of times before that people who played the original Brass much prefer Lancashire because it's a lot closer to the original. But Brass Birmingham really works well for me, and I've tried it out using various strategies, and all of the strategies I've tried work and build up towards something. And I really like the fact that there's 2 halves of the game. There's 2 scoring points on the game, and there's a couple of little manipulations and changes on the rules that happen at that halfway point. And it means that if you spend the first half of the game working towards having something that will score but will maintain its position for the second half of the game, you're probably going to do really well. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate the thinkiness that goes on with this. And it does get played quite a good amount in this house. Brass Birmingham, you ask me what do I want to play, it's probably going to be that. So look, that is my 2019 in review, my wrap up, my top 10 games of what I've played. If you dislike or like any of the games that I've suggested here in my top 10, please comment below. I'd love to hear what you have to think about it, have to say. If you know of any games that I've totally missed that I should have put onto this list because they're that good, let me know. I may not have even played them yet. So there's just too many games around for one person to be able to play all of them. If you have any comments or suggestions, please write them below. If you have any games that you would like to be gamesplained, please shoot me an email to thegamesplainer@gmail.com. Please follow my Instagram and Twitter accounts at thegamesplainer to keep up to date with the games that I'm playing. Subscribe to my videos to keep up to date with the games that I'm gamesplaining. And until next time, enjoy gaming.